Mic check. Mic check. Mic check. Mic check. Mic check. Mic check. Ooh. Ooh. What's happening, family? Welcome to another episode of the P-Ave Perspective. I'm your host, Mr. O'Neill, and tonight we're tackling a subject that sits at the foundation of every community, every neighborhood, every family, and every generation. Tonight's topic is the father factor. The father factor. Why strong fathers build strong families. And first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in, whether you are watching the live stream or whether you're watching the replay video that I post on my YouTube channel. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and hopefully I can get people to take part in this conversation tonight, because as always with the PR perspective, it's about discussing issues that affect us and our community, and more importantly, discussing or trying to find solutions to those problems. But first of all, let me say this conversation is not about blaming anybody. It's not about blaming women. It's not about attacking single mothers. It's not about judging people for their circumstances or none of that. This conversation is about understanding the truth that many people are afraid to discuss. But when fathers are absent, families suffer. When fathers are present and engaged, families thrive. It is what it is. And don't get me wrong, not all families are the same. Not all men are the same. So I'm not acting like it's a one size fits all. But like I said, we'll discuss it. But the main points I want to discuss tonight are the traditional role of fathers, why fathers matter, what happened to traditional fatherhood, how fatherlessness impacts our communities, and most importantly, how we rebuild strong fathers and strong families. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. And like I always say, it's needed more than ever. We have so much stuff going on with our youth. We have so much going on with our women and our men. And whether we want to admit it or not, we got away from family. We got away from real family structure. And that structure starts with fathers. But make sure you like, share, comment, and invite somebody into the conversation, because as always, somebody needs to hear this tonight. Somebody needs to hear this. But let's get into it. And first of all, it's about the original assignment of the father. And before a man can lead a family, he must first learn how to lead himself. He must first learn how to be a man. Before you can be a father, before you can be a husband, before you can be anything, you have to learn how to be a man. A father's first responsibility is not money, it's not sex, it's not having children, it's not getting married. His first responsibility is developing as a man. And developing as a man starts with developing character, or who you're going to be. In becoming a man, you must first establish your own personal morals. You must establish a set of personal values. You must develop personal discipline and integrity and purpose, a purpose in your life. What are you going to be? Where are you headed? And how are you going to get there? And a father without those basic principles cannot create a principled family. If you don't develop that first, you have no hope of creating a strong, functional family. But a question to the viewers: what values did your father teach you? Or if you didn't have a father in your life, like a lot of us, what values do you wish your father had taught you? Because strong families begin with strong men. And in the real world, a lot of us didn't get the proper development. And just keep it real. A lot of us didn't, especially people where I came from, we didn't get the proper development because in order to be a real man and especially a father, we had the best way to learn that was to watch a man in action, watch a father in action. And so many of us didn't have our fathers. We didn't have fathers in our life. We didn't have father figures. And we developed, even with our mothers, you know, we didn't have, as men, we didn't have men in our lives, or a lot of the women in our lives, our mothers, they couldn't teach us how to be men. They couldn't teach us how to be men. And like you said, strong men begin with strong character. But we didn't develop properly. Like, honestly, I can remember back then, I remember the strong family. I remember the father and the mothers. And usually, like I said, before you became a father, you became a man during the developmental stages in your life. And most people born into two family households, they got the proper development. They were able to see a mother and a father working together. And usually, like I said, I've talked about before, when men courted women, you usually courted a woman who had similar values, who had similar morals, you know. And back then, compared to now, whether that woman was a helper in supporting you in achieving your purpose for life and family, or whether she had her own purpose and y'all both had, you know, personal goals, personal ambition. People got together then based on morals, values, and what they wanted out of life, what they wanted out of life. And that started long before fatherhood. And that's where we lost that because we didn't see it a lot. And a lot of us, I speak for myself when I say, like, I really became, before I became a man, really in a sense, I became a father. And that's how it happens with a lot of us. But that's key in being a strong family. That a strong family is established, the foundation of the family is established long before the actual kids are born, or before we become a father. And if you don't establish that first, it's hard to be a strong father. It's hard for two people to work together to raise kids. But like I said, a lot of us became fathers before we became men. And that's one of the greatest mistakes that we can make. trying to build a family before we discover who we are and discover what we stand for and discover our purpose. But that's how it went down. But before we can really or before we're really ready to become fathers, we have to realize and know who we are. We have to know what we believe, what we stand for, and what we are called to do in life before trying to lead a wife and children. And like I said, a lot of us, you know, get it twisted. We became fathers before we became men. But a wife is not supposed to create a man's purpose. A wife is not supposed to be a man's purpose. But traditionally, wives were supposed to help men fulfill their purpose. Because what is life as a man without having his children or the foundation of his legacy to carry on, who he is, who he was, what he's building, and what he's leaving behind. But when men lack purpose, the relationship will be unstable, families will be confused, children won't have direction, and it would just be turmoil. It would just be turmoil. But again, to my audience, how many family problems we start because people got together before they knew who they were? Think about that. Because as people, I know I've thought back over 100 times and realized that I had kids before I knew who I was. And I know a lot of women are like that. I know a lot of men. But how many family problems start because people got together before they knew who they were? Just think about that. Think about that for a minute. But choosing the right wife, and let me get this straight, like we didn't see a lot of, married people. We didn't see a lot of wives in the community. So even choosing the right woman to have kids with, it's like that's key. That's key because whether you're married or not, you know, we see you don't have to be married to become a father, to get a baby. You don't have to be married to do that. But a strong father, a strong man understands that family is a partnership, whether you're married or not. You know what I'm saying? I believe in marriage. I still do. But I know when I was young, I wasn't ready. And just like I said, in knowing that, I should have known that I wasn't ready to have kids either. But I was blessed with my kids before I was figured out who I was, before I became a man. But I realized that the wrong partner can destroy a family, no matter what you do. The wrong man, the wrong woman can destroy a family. So that's the one thing, that everybody has to realize. But as a man, more importantly, the right partner can also help build strong generations. Just as importantly. But in picking a good mate, in picking a good wife, like I said before, the right mate, the right mother to your kids, the right wife should share your values, have similar values, value some of the same things that you value. She should also respect the family mission, meaning where are you taking this family to? Which, like I said, as a man, you should know that before you get married. You want to raise a family, what do you want for your family? She should also support growth. You should vice versa support her growth. She should help create stability within your life and within the family. And she should be qualified to raise healthy children, mentally and emotionally. Because if not, it don't work like that. So those are the qualities that we should be looking for in a mate to begin with. But likewise, a man must be worthy of a good woman. A man must be worthy of a good wife, because many people want quality spouses while refusing to become quality people. And that's going on a lot in this world. You know what I'm saying? That's going on a lot because what men are out here just spreading their seed, and women are allowing them to spread their seed. But I hear so many men say they want good women, and so many women say they want good men. But as a good man, before you even deserve a good woman, you have to make sure that you are a good man. And part of being a good man is not only having all those manly qualities, but also being man enough to take your time to choose the right mate. But to our youngsters, even to our older people who still look to get married, like, are we preparing ourselves to become the kind of spouses we want? If you want a supportive, loving, nurturing wife or mate, are you a supportive, loving, healthy man? Or are you diligently doing the work to become that person? If not, you really don't deserve it. You really don't deserve that type of person. But let's talk about the elephant in the room. Like, how did we get here? How did we get to this point as men? How did fatherlessness become so common? And like I said, we can, discuss all the factors. We can discuss the economic shifts. We can discuss how men lost their jobs and opportunities. We can talk about how economic instability weakened families. We can talk about drugs. We can talk about mass incarceration. Millions of kids grew up without fathers because fathers were removed from the home. Fathers left the home. As men, we chose to do illegal stuff. We can say we didn't have choices, but we did. And any man who really have done the work on himself, that you had choices. You could have made different choices, but we didn't. We made bad choices, so we were locked away from our families. We can talk about the cultural shifts, because we all know that society started a while ago, but even now today, even more so, by minimizing the importance of fathers in the home and in our kids' lives. But the government set it up to where fatherhood was optional. It became optional instead of essential. Like, instead of choosing fathers and working with the fathers, like, you could choose welfare and let the government take care of you and tell you couldn't have a man in the house. Like, we can talk about all that. We can talk about like I said earlier, the many men who didn't learn how to be fathers because nobody fathered them. We can talk about, like I said, you cannot teach what you never learned. You cannot, learn what you never saw. We can talk about all of that. We can talk about all the excuses about how we got to, and they are legitimate excuses. But I can speak for me personally when I say, like, even though I didn't know how to be a father, once we have kids, that changes. That changes. And like I said, I can't be a critic of children born out of wedlock, but I had my kids out of wedlock. And the one thing I can say is even though I became a father before I became a man, I knew enough in my own life dealing with my father, not having my father in my life, having a male figure, a father figure to step up and be a father in my life, having my granddad as a male role model in my life. I knew enough to know that number one, I didn't want to be like my father and not be in my kid's life. Number two, like I never wanted to be the guy who lied to my kids, didn't show up for my kids, because I knew how my father lying to me and not showing up for me, like I knew how it affected. So even though I didn't know how to be a man, like some things just, really came natural in the living life, living life. And now, like I said, even though we went through all of that and we can blame all of those issues, like we look at entire communities are paying the price for those issues. But like I said, we, a lot of us made decisions. Just like I made the decision to try to always be in my kids' life, I can also say that I wasn't there all the time. I made decisions that sent me to prison. I made decisions that took me out of my kids' life for extended periods of time. But while I was nowhere near the perfect dad, like I was a trying dad. I was a trying dad. And that's, you know, it wasn't enough. But like, again, it is what it is. But like, I know that not being in my kids' life as much as I could have, as much as I should have, it caused problems with my children. And it caused problems with other kids not having a father in their life. And it causes identity struggles in our kids. It causes anger. Our kids are angry for not having a father and having to, deal with what they have to deal with without a father present. It caused abandonment issues. A lot of people, both men and women, both deal with abandonment issues from not having a father in their life and feeling abandoned. A lot of kids suffer from lack of discipline, poor self-esteem. It's so many factors that fatherlessness cause in our children and in our communities. We not having fathers, it caused increased crime in our communities from lack of protection. It caused gang involvement, from our fathers not being there, to show us the right way or to school us. A lot of us turned to gangs and people we thought were our friends. It caused violence. Like I said, it caused educational struggles and generational poverty. There's so many factors, again, that not only our kids, but our community as a whole had to face because of lack of fathers, man, being in the household. And don't get me wrong, like I said earlier, fatherless fatherlessness does not guarantee failure. That will be taken away from the single mothers who have done incredible jobs at raising happy, productive kids. And we always have to acknowledge that. Some of our women did a great job in raising our kids when we weren't there as fathers. But we have to stop pretending that fathers are unnecessary, because while we give credit to those single mothers who push through and raise happy, healthy kids, we also have to look at the flip side and the women that couldn't do it by themselves and look at the problem that's caused and is still causing in our kids and in our community. And we can't, like, not acknowledge that. We can't act like, it's not an issue. But children deserve both parents, man, whenever possible. And just like I said, I'm not saying everybody has to be married, but once two people have a child, whether they realize it or not, if that child is going to turn out to be the best possible human being, both parents have to work together. Both parents have to work together. And that starts with being a father, maintaining a relationship, not saying it has to be physical, not saying it has to be, perfect, but you have to maintain a relationship with the mother of your child. But another question, what positive impact did your father have in your life? If you had your father in your life, what positive impact? Answer in the chat if you will. Or how did not having a father affect your life? Drop it in the chat. Let's talk about it. But like I said, fatherlessness is one of our biggest issues. And we have to, do our part to start rebuilding. And we have to do our part to start rebuilding strong fathers. And I have a few suggestions on how we can do that. But like I said, yes, we talk about the problems, but it wouldn't be a show. It's easy to talk about, why we here, the current state, how we got here, and all of that. But the conversation is not complete unless we talk about the solutions, because that's what the P-Ave Perspective is all about. Not just identifying problems, but finding and building solutions to those problems, because we have to get it right. We have to get it right. But solution number one is always with me, no matter what the situation, no matter what the problem is, accountability. We have to restore accountability. Men must take responsibility for their actions and their decisions. And that's who you have kids with. And once those kids are here, regardless of, how you may feel, regardless of, what you may think about them, like, y'all have kids. And once those kids are here, you're obligated as a man to be a father, even if you're not a husband, even when you're not a boyfriend. You are obligated to be a father. And it is what it is. We have to take accountability and we have to take responsibility. Number two, whenever possible, since there are so many absent fathers, and we have to take on mentorship roles. We have to become mentors. Like, us as older men must mentor younger men, because not everybody's fathers there. We have fathers that are still incarcerated. We have some fathers that RIP are not here no more. So it's our responsibility as men and as fathers to mentor our youngsters, man, and try to give them the stability and the guidance that they need. But every young man needs guidance, regardless of what. Every young man needs guidance. And if you're in a position to where you're blessed to come in contact with some of these youngsters today who need that guidance, man, you need to try to give it whenever possible. Another solution would be faith and values. Families need principles bigger than emotions. Strong values create strong homes. So regardless of what, and I know, man, don't get me don't get me misunderstood. I know it's always not easy to deal with a lot of these women these days, because these women, face their own issues. They have their own issues. And I know as a man, not being with a woman or not being married to a woman, trying to, keep her on her value and keep her on her faith and keep her on her principles, man, that could be one of the hardest things. That could be one of the hardest things, even agreeing, with our kid's mother. I know it's hard, but as a man, you have to stand on it, even when others don't. It is what it is. You know, even when you see that your kid's mother is against you, even when you see that she don't have morals or she lives her life in a way that negatively affects the kids, you have to stay focused, man. You have to stick to yours. You have to continue to spend even more time and spend even more, instilling in them. Because even when you see, they go home to the negativity, you have to be even more positive. You can't feed in the negativity of disrespecting a mom or, none of that, because they see that. They see that. And that's one of the things I prided myself on in dealing with women. Like I wasn't the best. So I knew, they ain't the best. So I knew like my kids can't see me arguing with their mom. My kids can't see me disrespecting their mom. Kids can't see me calling their mom out of their name or talking down on their mom. And they, like regardless of what, I had to show them the positive. I had to, regardless of what they were being shown when they weren't with me. I had to make sure as a man that I did my part to show them what a man was all about and what a father stood for. But next, we have to start teaching fatherhood early. We teach young men how to make babies, but not how to raise them. And even with us getting babies and not, being in our kids' life, we teach our young ladies how to get men and get babies by men who are not in their lives. It is what it is, and we have to face that. But that must change. It got to change. That's the only way we can change this cycle and get right. And we have to start doing our part. And the one thing I learned about accountability is it really don't matter what the next person is doing. You can't control the next person, but you can control yourself. You can control your actions, and you can control what you show your kids. Point blank, period. Next, we have community involvement. We need more community involvement. We need our churches. We need our schools. We need our coaches. We need community business owners, community leaders, like everybody in the community has to play a role in helping to raise healthy men, healthy young ladies. It's simple, man. No matter how we look at it, if we want better communities, we need better families. If we want better families, we need stronger fathers. We need stronger fathers. But like I said, it's never about blame, but it's always about responsibility. The future of our communities will be determined by the men we raise today. And we're doing a poor job of it now. Look at the young men in our communities. Look at the struggles that they face. Look at the obstacles that are knocking them down and they're unable to overcome. But strong fathers produce strong sons, strong daughters, strong families, and strong communities. If we're serious about changing our neighborhoods, we have to become serious about restoring fatherhood. We have to. And if we're not, don't do it. But always remember, man, the greatest gift a father can leave his children is not money. It's not money. I learned that a long time ago. The strongest gift that a father can give and leave his children is his example, man. Being there, spending time with them, showing them what a father truly represents, showing them what a father truly stands for, showing them how a father shows up, how a father carries himself. But thank you all for joining us tonight on the P-Ave Perspective. Make sure you like, share, follow, and subscribe. On Facebook, I am Toby O'Neill, my personal Facebook page. On YouTube, I am Toby O'Neill. And if you haven't already, I shared the link. I'll share the link in the comments for the new P-Ave Perspective page. If you haven't already, subscribe to the new page to keep up with all the replays that I post on there. And until next time, let's continue building strong minds, stronger families, and stronger communities. Peace.